they can take any other book.
They are searching meanwhile, so I am reading from.
Oh, no, I don't want.
यही पढ़िए.
Okay. From the beginning, Maharaj?
Part 2.
Chapter 2. From beginning, chapter 2. Yes, ma'am.
खाली only अनुवाद पढ़ेगा.
Okay.
इधर 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 बच्चे इधर. नाम क्या है इसका चैप्टर का?
चैप्टर का नाम Divinity and Divine Service. He has found Guru Maharaj annually. Okay. Should I start from introduction of chapter 1, Guru Maharaj? Nectar of Devotion. Introduction. Invoking auspiciousness. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the reservoir of all rasas or relationships, which are called neutrality, passive adoration, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, conjugal love, comedy, compassion, fear, chivalry, ghastliness, wonder, and devastation. He is a supreme attractive form, and by his universal and transcendental attractive features, he has captivated all the gopis headed by Taraka, Palika, Shyama, Lalita, and ultimately Srimati Radharani. Let his lordship's grace be on us so that there may not be any hindrance in the execution of this duty of writing the nectar of devotion, impelled by his divine grace, Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. Let me offer my humble, respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada and of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, by whose inspiration I have been engaged in the matter of compiling this summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is the sublime science of devotional service as propounded by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared 500 years ago in West Bengal, India, to propagate the movement of Krishna consciousness. Srila Rupa Goswami begins this great book by offering his respectful obeisances unto Sri Sanatan Goswami, who is his elder brother and spiritual master. And he prays that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu may be very pleasing to him. He further prays that by residing in that ocean of nectar, Sri Sanatan Goswami may always feel transcendental pleasure in the service of Radha and Krishna. Let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the great devotees and acharyas, holy teachers, who are compared to sharks in the great ocean of nectar, and who do not care for the various rivers of liberation. Impersonalists are very fond of merging into the Supreme, like rivers that come down and merge into the ocean. The ocean can be compared to liberation, and the rivers to all the different paths of liberation. The impersonalists are dwelling in the river water. which eventually comes to mix with the ocean. They have no information, however, that within the ocean, as within the river, there are innumerable aquatic living entities. The sharks who dwell in the ocean do not care for the rivers which are gliding down into it. The devotees eternally live in the ocean of devotional service, and they do not care for the rivers. In other words, those who are pure devotees always remain in the ocean of transcendental loving service to the Lord and have no business with the other processes, which are compared to rivers that only gradually come to the ocean. Srila Rupa Goswami prays to his spiritual master, Srila Sanatana Goswami, for the protection of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the pure nectar of devotional service, from the argumentative logicians who unnecessarily meddle in the science of service to the Lord. He compares their arguments and logics to volcanic eruptions in the midst of the ocean. In the midst of the ocean, volcanic eruptions can do very little harm. And similarly, those who are against devotional service to the Lord and who put forward many philosophical theses about the ultimate transcendental realization cannot disturb this great ocean of devotional service. The author of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, very humbly submits that he is just trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Although he humbly thinks himself unfit for this work, that should be the attitude of all the preachers of Krishna consciousness movement. Following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami, we should never think of ourselves as great preachers, but should always consider that we are simply instrumental to the previous acharyas, and simply by following in their footsteps, we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is divided into four parts, just as the ocean is sometimes divided into 4 parts, and there are different sections within each of these four divisions. Originally, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean is divided like the watery ocean into east, south, west and north, while the subsections within these different divisions are called waves. As in the ocean, there are different waves, either on the eastern side, the southern side, the western side or the northern side. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu similarly has different waves. In the first part, there are 4 waves. The first being a general description of devotional service. The second concerns the regulative principles for executing devotional service. And the third wave, devotional service in ecstasy. In the fourth is the ultimate goal, love of God. These will be explicitly described along with their different symptoms. The authorized descriptions of bhakti or devotional service, following in the footsteps of previous acharyas, can be summarized in the following statement by Srila Rupa Goswami. First class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, serving the Lord favorably. The purport is that one may also be in Krishna consciousness unfavorably, but that cannot be counted as pure devotional service. Pure devotional service should be free. Pure devotional service should be free from the desire for any material benefit or for sense gratification, as these desires are cultivated through fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. Generally, people are engaged in different activities to get some material profit, while most philosophers are engaged in proposing transcendental realizations through volumes of word jugglery and speculation. Pure devotional service must always be free from such fruitive activities and philosophical speculations. One has to learn Krishna consciousness or pure devotional service from the authorities by spontaneous loving service. This devotional service is a sort of cultivation. It is not simply inaction for people who like to be inactive or devote their time to silent meditation. There are many different methods for people who want this, but cultivation of Krishna consciousness is different. The particular word used by Srila Rupa Goswami in this connection is anushilana, or cultivation by following the predecessor teachers, acharyas. As soon as we say cultivation, we must refer to activity. Without activity, consciousness alone cannot help us. All activities may be divided into two classes. One class may be for achieving a certain goal, and the other may be for avoiding some unfavorable circumstances. In Sanskrit, these activities are called pravritti and nivritti, positive and negative action. There are many examples of negative actions. For instance, a diseased person has to be cautious and take medicine in order to avoid some unfavorable illness. Those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in activity. Such activity can be performed with the body or with the mind. Thinking, feeling, and willing are all activities of the mind. And when we will to do something, the activity comes to be manifest by the gross bodily senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him. Following in the footsteps of great acharyas and personal spiritual masters, there are activities of the body, activities of the mind, and activities of speech. A Krishna conscious person engages his words in preaching the glories of the Lord. This is called Kirtan. And by his mind, a Krishna conscious person always thinks of the activities of the Lord. As he is speaking on the battlefield of Kurukshetra or engaging in his various pastimes in Vrindavan with his devotees. In this way, one can always think of activities and pastimes of the Lord. This is the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. Similarly, we can offer many services with our bodily activities, but all such activities must be in relationship with Krishna. This relationship is established by connecting oneself with the bona fide spiritual master, who is the direct representative of Krishna in disciplic succession. Therefore, the execution of Krishna conscious activities with the body should be directed by the spiritual master and then performed with faith. The connection with the spiritual master is called initiation. From the date of initiation by the spiritual master, the connection between Krishna and a person cultivating Krishna consciousness is established. Without initiation by a bona fide spiritual master, the actual connection with Krishna consciousness is never performed. This cultivation of Krishna consciousness is not material. The Lord has three general energies, namely the external energy, the internal energy, and the marginal energy. The living entities are called marginal energy, and the material cosmic manifestation is the action of external or material energy. Then there is the spiritual world, which is a manifestation of the internal energy. The living entities, who are called marginal energy, perform material activities when acting under the inferior external energy. And when they engage in activities under the internal spiritual energy, their activities are called Krishna conscious. This means that those who are great souls or great devotees do not act under the spell of material energy, but act instead under the protection of the spiritual energy. Any activities done in devotional service or in Krishna consciousness are directly under the control of spiritual energy. In other words, energy is a sort of strength, and this strength can be spiritualized by the mercy of both the bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Lord Chaitanya states that it is a fortunate person who comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. One who is serious about spiritual life is given by Krishna the intelligence to come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. And then, by the grace of the spiritual master, one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness. In this way, the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the spiritual energy, Krishna and the spiritual master. This has nothing to do with the material energy. When we speak of Krishna, we refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead along with his many expansions. He is expanded by his plenary parts and parcels. His differentiated parts and parcels are his different energies. Krishna, in other words, means everything and includes everything. Generally, however, we should understand Krishna to mean Krishna and his personal expansions. Krishna expands himself as Baldev, Sankarshan, Vasudev, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Ram, Nrsimha, and Varaha, as well as many other incarnations and innumerable Vishnu expansions. These are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam to be as numerable as numerous as the uncountable waves. So Krishna includes all such expansions as well as his pure devotees. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Krishna's expansions are all complete in eternity, blissful and cognizance. Devotional service means to prosecute Krishna conscious activities which are favorable to the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and any activities which are not favorable to the transcendental pleasure of the Lord cannot be accepted as devotional service. For example, great demons like Ravana, Kamsa and Hiranyakashipu were always thinking of Krishna, but they were thinking of him as their enemy. This sort of thinking can be accepted as bhakti, cannot be accepted as bhakti or Krishna consciousness. The impersonalists sometimes misunderstand devotional service in such a way that they divide Krishna from his paraphernalia and pastimes. For example, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the impersonalists say that although Krishna is of interest, the battlefield of Kurukshetra is not. The devotees, however, also know that the battlefield of Kurukshetra
पीछे पांच लाइन पीछे पड़े हैं.
Devotional service means to prosecute Krishna conscious activities which are favorable to transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and any activities which are not favorable to the transcendental favor of the Lord cannot be accepted as devotional service. For example, great demons like Ravan, Kamsa and Hiranyakashipu were always thinking of Krishna, but they were thinking of him as their enemy. This sort of thinking cannot be accepted as bhakti or Krishna consciousness. The impersonalists sometimes misunderstand devotional service in such a way that they divide Krishna from his paraphernalia and pastimes. For example, Bhagavad Gita is spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the impersonalists say that although Krishna is of interest, the battlefield of Kurukshetra is not. The devotees, however, also know that the battlefield of Kurukshetra by itself has nothing to do with their business, but in addition, they know that Krishna does not mean just Krishna alone. He is always with his associates and paraphernalia. For instance, if someone says, give something to eat to the man with the weapons, the eating process is done by the man and not by the weapons. Similarly, in Krishna consciousness, a devotee may be interested in paraphernalia and locations, but such as a battlefield of Kurukshetra, which are associated with Krishna, but he is not concerned with simply any battlefield. He is concerned with Krishna, his speech, his instructions, etc. It is because Krishna is there that the battlefield is so important. This is the summary understanding of what Krishna consciousness is. Without this understanding, one is sure to misunderstand why the devotees are interested in battlefield of Kurukshetra. One who is interested in Krishna becomes interested in his different pastimes and activities. The definition of a pure devotee, as given by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, can be summarized thus: his service is favorable and is always in relation to Krishna. In order to keep the purity of such Krishna conscious activities, one must be freed from all material desires and philosophical speculations. Any desire except for the service of the Lord is called material desire, and philosophical speculation refers to the sort of speculation which ultimately arrives at a conclusion of voidism or impersonalism. This conclusion is useless for a Krishna conscious person. Only rarely by philosophical speculation can one reach the conclusion of worshipping Vasudeva Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita itself. The ultimate end of philosophical speculation then must be Krishna, with the understanding that Krishna is everything, the cause of all causes, and that one should therefore surrender unto him. If this ultimate goal is reached, then philosophical advancement is favorable. But if the conclusion of philosophical speculation is voidism or impersonalism, that is not bhakti. Karma or fruitive activities are sometimes misunderstood to be ritualistic activities. There are many persons who are very much attracted by the ritualistic activities described in the Vedas. But if one becomes attracted simply to ritualistic activities without understanding Krishna, his activities are unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. Actually, Krishna consciousness can be based simply on hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Described in Srimad Bhagavatam are 9 different processes, besides which everything done is unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. Thus, one should always be guarding against these fall downs. Srila Rupa Goswami has also mentioned in this definition of bhakti the word jnana karmadi. This karmadi, fruitive work, consists of activities which are unable to help one attain to pure devotion service. Many forms of so-called renunciation are also not favorable to Krishna conscious devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami has also quoted a definition from the Narad Pancharatra as follows. One should be free from all material designation and by Krishna consciousness must be cleansed of all material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. So, when our senses are engaged for the actual proprietor of the senses, that is called devotional service. In our conditional state, our senses are engaged in serving these bodily demands. When the same senses are engaged in executing the order of Krishna, our activities are called bhakti. As long as one identifies himself as belonging to a certain family, a certain society, or a certain person, he is said to be covered with designation. When one is fully aware that he does not belong to any family, society, or country, but is eternally related to Krishna, he then realizes that his energy should be employed not in the interest of so-called family, society, or country, but in the interest of Krishna. This is purity of purpose and platform of pure devotion service in Krishna consciousness. Part 1, Chapter 1. Characteristics of pure devotional service. In Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd Canto, 29th chapter, verse 12 and 13, Srila Kapildev, while instructing his mother, has given the following characteristics of pure devotional service. My dear mother, those who are my pure devotees and who have no desire for material benefit or philosophical speculation have their minds so much engaged in my service that they are never interested in asking me for anything except to be engaged in that service. They do not even beg to live in my abode with me. There are 5 kinds of liberation, namely to become one with the Lord, to live with the Supreme Lord on the same planet, to have same features as the Lord, to enjoy the same opulence as the Lord, and to live as the companion of the Lord. A devotee
So you're tired?
sorry,
You're tired? You know what?
sorry, a devotee, but to speak of rejecting material sense gratification, does not even want any of the 5 kinds of liberation. He is satisfied simply by discharging loving service to the Lord. That is the characteristic of pure devotion. In the above statement by Kapil Dev from Srimad Bhagavatam, the actual position of a pure devotee is described, and the primary characteristic of devotional service are also defined. Further, characteristics of devotional service are described by Rupa Goswami with evidences from different scriptures. He states that there are 6 characteristics of pure devotional service, which are as follows. 1. Pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. 4th, pure devotional service is rarely achieved. 5th, those in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation. 6th, pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. Krishna is all attractive, but pure devotional service attracts even him. This means that pure devotional service is even transcendently stronger than Krishna himself, because it is Krishna's internal potency. Relief from material distress. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that one should surrender unto him, giving up all other engagements. The Lord also gives his word there that he will protect surrendered souls from the reactions of all sinful activities. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the distresses from sinful activities are due both to the sins themselves and to the sins committed in our past lives. Generally, one commits sinful activities due to ignorance, but ignorance is no excuse for evading the reaction. Sinful activities. Sinful activities are of two kinds: those which are mature and those which are not mature. The sinful activities for which we are suffering at present moment are called mature. The many sinful activities stored within us for which we may not have yet suffered are considered immature. For example, a man may have committed criminal acts but not yet been arrested for them. Now, as soon as he is detected, arrest is awaiting him. Similarly, for some of our sinful activities, we are awaiting distresses in the future, and for others which are mature, we are suffering at the present moment. In this way, there is a chain of sinful activities and their concomitant distresses, and the conditional soul is suffering life after life due to these sins. He is suffering in the present life the result of sinful activities from his past life, and he is meanwhile creating further sufferings for his future life. Mature sinful activities are exhibited if one is suffering from some chronic disease, if one is suffering from some legal implication, if one is born in a low and degraded family, or if one is uneducated or very ugly. There are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment, and we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities. But all these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take the Krishna consciousness. As evidence from this, Srila Rupa Goswami quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 14, verse number 19th. This verse is in connection with Lord Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, where he says, "My dear Uddhava, devotion service unto me is just like a blazing fire, which can burn into ashes, unlimited fuel supplied to it." The purport is that as a blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes, so devotion service to the Lord in Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. For example, in the Gita, Arjun thought that fighting was a sinful activity, but Krishna engaged him on the battlefield under his order, and so the fighting became devotion service. Therefore, Arjuna was not subjected to any sinful reaction. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes another verse from the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 33rd chapter, verse number 6, in which Devhuti addresses his son Kapil Dev and says, "My dear Lord, there are 9 different kinds of devotional service, beginning from hearing and chanting. Anyone who hears about your pastimes, who chants about your glories, who offers you obeisances, who thinks of you in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service. Even if he is born in a family of dog eaters, the lowest grade of mankind, becomes immediately qualified to perform sacrifices. As soon as, sorry, as such, how is it possible that anyone actually engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness has not become purified? It is not possible. One who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service has without doubt become freed from all contaminations of material sinful activities. Devotional service, therefore, has the power to actually nullify all kinds of reactions to sinful deeds. A devotee is nevertheless always alert not to commit any sinful activities. This is his specific qualification as a devotee.
Anand Chetan Prabhu.
Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam states that
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
I lost my voice yesterday.
I know Gurudev, Nityakisha Prabhu told me, so please don't talk. Yes. Gurudev, you also went to Radha Madan Mohanji Karoli from Vrindavan, so we got a little prasad for you. I'll give it to Prabhuji.
Yes, Karoli yesterday.
How better?
No, Maharaj, we went from Jaipur, from Vrindavan, Maharaj.
Sweet time.
Yes, Maharaj. On Monday, Maharaj, we went. Yes, Maharaj. Yes. So, Maharaj, I just wanted to give you an update on Sitarani's father's health also. So he was in ICU. He's in ICU in Apollo. So he had a little heart attack earlier. So there was water in the lungs. So now he's off the ventilator, but still the health is not very good. He's still in the ICU. They are monitoring. Yes, Maharaj.
I didn't know. You were not well.
Yes, Maharaj. I just wanted to give you an update. So he's in the ICU, but he's better than 3 days earlier, and his health is improving. Still some water in the lungs, and kidney is not functioning very well, but better. He's not in the ventilator, and they're monitoring his health now.
कितने साल के?
Oh, Maharaj, he's 83. Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. So he's been keeping very well till now. So now is the first time he had some difficulty. Yes, Maharaj. His health is already good. Yes. Yes, Maharaj. So true, Maharaj. Thank you for your darshan, Maharaj.
a devotee is nevertheless always alert not to commit any sinful activities. This is his specific qualification as a devotee. Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam states that by performing devotional service, a person who was born even in a family of dog eaters may become eligible to take part in the performance of ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas. It is implicit in this statement that a person born into a family of dog eaters is generally not fit for performing yajna or sacrifice. The priestly caste in charge of performing these ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas is called the Brahmin order. Unless one is a Brahmin, he cannot perform these ceremonies. A person is born in a Brahmin family or in a family of dog eaters due to his past activities. If a person is born in a family of dog eaters, it means that his past activities were all sinful. But if even such a person takes to the path of devotion service and begins to chant the holy names of Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, he is at once fit to perform the ritualistic ceremonies. This means that his sinful reactions have immediately become neutralized. It is stated in the Padma Puran that there are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities, which are listed as follows. 1. The effect which is not yet fructified. 2. The effect which is lying as seed. 3. The effect which is already mature. And 4. The effect which is almost mature. It is stated that all these 4 effects become immediately vanquished for those who surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and become engaged in his devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. Those effects described as almost mature refer to the distress from which one is suffering at present, and the effects lying as seed are in the core of the heart, where there is a certain stock of sinful desires which are like seeds. The Sanskrit word kutam means that they are almost ready to produce a seed or the effect of the seed. An immature effect refers to the case where the seedling has not begun. From this statement of Pada Puran, it is understood that material contamination is very subtle. Its beginning, its fruition, and results. Should I read from Hindi, Maharaj?
English.
Hindi.
English.
Those effects described as almost mature refer to the distress from which one is suffering at present, and the effects lying as seed are in the core of the heart, where there is a certain stock of sinful desires which are like seeds. The Sanskrit word kutam means that they are almost ready to produce the seed or the effect of the seed. An immature effect refers to the case where the seedling has not begun. From this statement of the Quran, it is understood that material contamination is very subtle. Its beginning, its fruition and results, and how one suffers such results in the form of distresses are part of a great chain. When one catches some disease, it is often very difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease, where it is originated, and how it is maturing. The suffering of a disease, however, does not appear all of a sudden. It actually takes time. And as in the medical field, for precaution's sake, the doctor injects a vaccination to prevent the growing of contamination. The practical injection to stop all the fructifications of seeds of our sinful activities is simply engagement in Krishna consciousness. In this connection, Shukadeva Goswami speaks in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, verse number 17, about the story of Ajamil, who began life as a fine and dutiful Brahmin, but in his young manhood became wholly corrupted by a prostitute. At the end of his wicked life, just by calling the name Narayan, he was saved despite so much sin. Shukadev points out that austerity, charity, and the performance of ritualistic ceremonies for counteracting sinful activities are recommended processes, but that by performing them, one cannot remove the sinful desire seed from the heart, as was the case with Ajamil in his youth. This sinful desire seed can be removed only by achieving Krishna consciousness, and this can be accomplished very easily by chanting the Maha Mantra or Hare Krishna Mantra as recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, unless one adopts the path of devotional service, he cannot be 100% clean from all the reactions of sinful activities. By performing Vedic ritualistic activities, by giving money in charity, and by undergoing austerity, one can temporarily become free from the reaction of sinful activities. But at the next moment, he must again become engaged in sinful activities. For example, a person suffering from venereal disease on account of excessive indulgence in sex life has to undergo some severe pain in medical treatment, and he is then cured for the time being. But because he has not been able to remove the sex desire from his heart, he must again indulge in the same thing and become a victim of the same disease. So medical treatment may give temporary relief from the distress of such venereal disease. But unless one is trained to understand that sex life is abominable, it is impossible to be saved from such repeated distress. Similarly, the ritualistic performances, charity and austerity, which are recommended in the Vedas, may temporarily stop one from acting in sinful ways, but as long as the heart is not clear, one will have to repeat sinful activities again and again. Another example given in Srimad Bhagavatam concerns the elephant who enters into a lake and takes a bath very seriously, cleansing his body thoroughly. Then as soon as he comes onto shore, he again takes some dust from the earth and throws it over his body. Similarly, a person who is not trained in Krishna consciousness cannot become completely free from the desire for sinful activities. Neither the yoga process nor philosophical speculation nor physical activities can save one from the seeds of sinful desire. Only by being engaged in devotional service can this be done. There is another evidence in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, verse number 29, wherein Sanat Kumar says, "My dear king, the false ego of human being is so strong that it keeps him in material existence as if tied up by a strong rope. Only the devotees can cut off the knot of this strong rope very easily by engaging themselves in Krishna consciousness. Others who are not in Krishna consciousness but are trying to become great mystics or great ritual performers cannot advance like the devotees. Therefore, it is the duty of everyone to engage himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness in order to be free from the tight knot of false ego and engagement in material activities." This tight knot of false ego is due to ignorance. As long as one is ignorant about his identity, he is sure to act wrongly and thereby become entangled in material contamination. This ignorance of factual knowledge can also be dissipated by Krishna consciousness, as is confirmed this ignorance of factual knowledge can also be dissipated by Krishna consciousness, as is confirmed in the Padma Purana as follows. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the highest enlightenment, and when such enlightenment is there, it is just like a blazing forest fire, killing all the inauspicious snakes of desires. The example is being given in this connection that when there is a forest fire, the extensive blazing automatically kills all the snakes in the forest. There are many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage and the snakes are immediately attacked. Animals who have 4 legs can flee from the fire or can at least try to flee, but the snakes are immediately killed. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. Krishna consciousness is all auspicious. Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for all the people of the world. At the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. There is even an attempt in the form of the United Nations for World Health Activities, but due to the shortcomings of limited national activities, such a general mass welfare program for the whole world is not practically possible. The Krishna consciousness movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement and everyone can feel the result. Therefore, Rupa Goswami and other learned scholars agree that a broad propaganda program for Krishna consciousness movement or devotion service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity. How the Krishna consciousness movement can attract the attention of the whole world and how each and every man can feel pleasure in this Krishna consciousness is stated in the Padma Purana as follows. A person who is engaged in devotion service in full Krishna consciousness is to be understood to be doing the best service to the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the world. In addition to human society, he is pleasing In addition to human society, he is pleasing even the trees and animals because they are also attracted by such a movement. A practical example of this was shown by Lord Chaitanya when he was traveling through the forest of Jharkhand in the central India for spreading his Sankirtan movement. Tigers, the elephants, the deer, and all the other wild animals joined him and were participating in their own ways by dancing, chanting Hare Krishna. Furthermore, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, acting in devotional service, can develop all the good qualities that are generally found in the demigods. It is said by Shukadeva Goswami in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, verse 12. My dear king, persons who have unflinching faith in Krishna and are without any duplicity can develop all the good qualities of the demigods on account of a devotee's high grade of Krishna consciousness. Even the demigods like to live with him, and therefore it can be understood that the qualities of the demigods have developed within his body. On the other hand, a person who is not in Krishna consciousness has no good qualities. He may be highly educated from the academic point of view, but in actual field of his activities, he can be seen to be baser than the animals. Even though a person is highly educated academically, if he cannot go beyond the sphere of mental activities, then he is sure to perform only material activities and thus remain impure. There are so many persons in the modern world who have been highly educated in the materialistic universities, but it is seen that they cannot take up the movement of Krishna consciousness and develop the high qualities of the demigods. For example, a Krishna conscious boy, even if he is not very well educated by the university standard, can immediately give up illicit sex life, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication. Whereas those who are not in Krishna consciousness, although very highly educated, are often drunkards, meat eaters, sex mongers, and gamblers. These are practical proofs of how a Krishna conscious person becomes highly developed in good qualities, whereas a person who is not in Krishna consciousness cannot do so. We experience that even a young boy in Krishna consciousness is unattached to cinemas, nightclubs, naked dance shows, restaurants, liquor shops, etc. He becomes completely freed. He saves his valuable time from being extravagantly spent in the way of smoking, drinking, attending the theatre, and dancing. One who is not in Krishna consciousness usually cannot sit silently even for half an hour. The yoga system teaches that if you become silent, you will realize that you are God. This system may be alright for materialistic persons, but how long will they be able to keep themselves silent? Artificially, they may sit down for so-called meditation, but immediately after their yogi performance, they will engage themselves again in such activities as illicit sex, life, gambling, sex life, gambling, meat eating, and many other nonsensical things. But a person who is in Krishna consciousness gradually elevates himself without endeavoring for this so-called silent meditation. Simply because he is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he automatically gives up all this nonsense and develops a high character. One develops the highest character by becoming a pure devotee of Krishna. The conclusion is that no one can truly have any good qualities if he is lacking Krishna consciousness. Second point.
हो गया
क्या बोलिए?
हो गया रिबन डाल दीजिए
केवल
उसी में चप्पल
दूसरी बार हैंड उसको मोड़ दे रहा हूँ,
फुल कागज डाल दे, कागज
मोड़ दे रहा हूँ इस पे छोड़ दूँ।
फटा से
How are you doing?
इतने से इतना मौजूद नहीं खड़ा हो, हल्का सा साइड से मोड़ते हैं। रहने दीजिए, करते हैं।
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for your kind service.
Come here.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Come anytime.
कभी भी आ सकते हैं।
नमो गोप्यः श्रीमतीभ्यः सौरभेभ्यः च नमो ब्रह्मसुताभ्यश्च पवित्राभ्यो नमो नमः मनोजवन्नां तुल्यवेगं नितेन्द्रियं बुद्धिमतां वरिष्ठं वातात्मजं वानरयूथमुख्यं श्रीरामदूतं शरणं प्रपद्ये भक्तभक्तिभगवन्त चतुर्नामवेक इनके पदबंधन किए नामे विघ्न हरियो आय विराजे कथा रस कहरी तब बददास तुम पाछे जो और रस खान जिनके सकल मनोरथ पूर्व श्री भगवान बार बार पद बंदो श्री नाभा आभागे जिन काढ़ो बाबा वेद को श्री भक्त मादर सुदे प्रियादास जिनके पद कमल बंदो बारंबार कीनी भक्ति रस बोधनी का सार चारि युगन में भगत जे जिनके पद की धूरी सरल सुशिर धरि राखी मेरी जीवन भूमि बंदं गुरुपद कन्य कृपा सिंधु नर रूप हरि महामोहतम पुण्य जासु बचन हरि करनि कर प्रणवहु पवन कुमार खलबल कारक ज्ञान धन या सुते आगार बसई राम सरछाप श्री राम जय जय राम श्री ब्रह्मांड कथा महामहोत्सव की समुद्र नारायण भगवान की जय सिद्ध विनायक भगवान की जय महालक्ष्मी माता की जय श्री भूतनाथ महादेव जी की जय सब संतन की जय सब भक्तन की जय सब पितरन की जय समस्त ब्रजवासीन की जय श्री सद्गुरुदेव भगवान की जय श्री हनुमान जी महाराज की जय 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 श्री राधे जय जय श्री सीताराम हर हर महादेव हरिशरणम अनंत कोटि ब्रह्मांड नायक सर्वेश्वर परात्पर परम ब्रह्म भक्त चरित्रों के परम रसिक श्रोता भगवान श्री हरि की महती कृपा करुणा से महाराष्ट्र प्रदेश की राजधानी भगवती महालक्ष्मी की नगरी सिद्ध विनायक की नगरी मुंबई में इस पवित्र परिसर में सत्संग मंडप में सत्संग परिवार के समायोजकत्व में श्री भक्तमान कथा का लाभ हम सबको प्राप्त हुआ है। पूज्य संतों की मंगलमयी उपस्थिति है। परम श्रद्धेय पूज्य स्वामी श्री शुद्धानंद जी महाराज कृपा पूर्वक हम लोगों के मध्य विराजे हैं। कल भी आपका मंगलमय दर्शन हुआ था और हमें ऐसा लगता है कि पूर्णाहुति तक आपकी मंगलमयी सन्निधि हम सबको प्राप्त होती रही। पूज्य स्वामी जी के चरणों में प्रणाम एवं सभी पूज्य संतों के चरणों में सादर दंडवत प्रणाम।
तुलसीदास जी महाराज का पावन चरित्र का स्मरण किया गया। और कल 20 जनवरी को भक्तिमती श्री मीराबाई जी का पावन चरित्र स्मरण किया। और आज 21 जनवरी मंगलवार को श्री हनुमान जी के चरित्र के स्मरण का सुनिश्चय किया गया है। कल 22 जनवरी को भक्तराज नरसिंह मेहता एवं 23 जनवरी को भगवान श्री कृष्ण के प्राण प्यारे सखा सुदामा जी का चरित्र, 24 जनवरी को प्रहलाद चरित्र और 25 जनवरी को ध्रुव चरित्र होकर यह सत्र संपन्न होगा। तो आज मंगलवार भी है और हनुमान जी का दिन है और आज तिथि भी बहुत सुंदर है। आज षटतिला एकादशी है। तिल जो है वो भगवान के श्रीअंग से उत्पन्न हुआ है। यज्ञ द्वारा भगवान के पसीने से तिल की उत्पत्ति है, इसलिए तिल की शास्त्रों में बड़ी महिमा है। जब भगवान सूर्य मकर राशि में प्रवेश करते हैं और वे जब तक मकर राशि में रहते हैं तब तक केवल कोई तिल शरीर में लगाकर, तिल को पीस करके उसका उदन लगाकर स्नान करे तो संपूर्ण पापों से मुक्त होकर वैकुंठ का अधिकारी होता है। ऐसा हमारे पुराणों में लिखा है। कथनचित कोई बहुत निर्धन व्यक्ति है, तिल भी नहीं जुटा सकता, स्नान के समय तिल तिल कहकर स्नान कर ले तो भी उसको पुण्य लाभ मिल जाएगा, तो भी उसको बहुत लाभ मिलेगा। और इसलिए 2 तिथियां निश्चित कर दी गई। मकर संक्रांति को तो तिल अवश्य लगावे और आज की जो तिथि है षटतिला एकादशी, उसका तो नाम ही षटतिला है। यद्यपि 7 प्रकार के धान्यों में तिल का नाम है, सप्तधान्य में तिल का नाम है, तिल अन्न है, किंतु सामान्य विधि विशेष विधि सामान्य विधि को बाध करके उपस्थित होती है। आज की एकादशी ही षटतिला है, इसलिए आज व्रत में तिल भक्षण का ही विधान। आज के दिन भगवान को तिल का भोग लगा करके तिल ही खाना चाहिए। 6 प्रकार से तिल का उपयोग आज करना चाहिए। तिलोदवर्ती, तिलस्नाही, तिल होता, तिलोदकी, तिलभुक, तिलदाता च षटतिला पावना। शरीर में तिल का उदन लगाकर स्नान करना चाहिए, पीस करके। जैसे आजकल तो मिक्सी भगवान की दया से 5 प्रकार तो भगवत कृपा से आज हो गए। तिल का उठन भी हो गया, तिल स्नान भी हो गया, तिल होम हो गया, तिल तर्पण हो गया, और ठाकुर जी को तिल का भोग लगाकर तिल ग्रहण भी कर लिया। एक चीज रहेगी, तिल का दान। तो वो व्यवस्था बन जाएगी तो आज शाम तक उसको भी संपादित कर दिया जाएगा। हमारे धर्म शास्त्रों में जहाँ कहीं जो कुछ लिखा है उसको अत्यंत श्रद्धापूर्वक मानना चाहिए, उसको यथाविधि करना चाहिए, भगवान की प्रसन्नता के लिए करना चाहिए और करने के बाद उसे भगवान के चरणों में अर्पित करना चाहिए। ऐसी पवित्र षष्ठीला तिथि को आज श्री हनुमान जी के मंगलमय चरित्र का स्मरण करेंगे। हमारे ब्रज में गिरिराज जी की तराई में महाराज चंद्र सरोवर में स्थापित सूर्य श्याम गौशाला पूज्य बाबा श्री ठाकुर दास जी का सत्संकल्प एवं पूज्य गुरुदेव का सत्संकल्प, उनके दोनों युगल महापुरुषों के सत्संकल्प से स्थापित सूर्य श्याम गौशाला, उससे हृदय से जुड़े हुए रश्मि भाई मुंबई में ही निवास करते हैं और आज कथा श्रवण करने आए हैं रेखा बहन के साथ। और प्रतिवर्ष सूर्य श्याम गौशाला में जो वार्षिक उत्सव होता है सूर्य श्याम गौशाला का, उसमें भगवान आपको ही मनोरथी के रूप में प्रतिवर्ष सेवा का सौभाग्य देते हैं। सभी ब्रजवासियों की गिरिराज जी की गौ माता की सेवा का सौभाग्य इन्हें मिलता है। और क्रमशः श्रीमद् भागवत जी की कथा चल रही है। कितने साल हो गए? 13 वर्ष हो गए। 13 वर्ष हो गए लगातार। तो भगवान की बड़ी कृपा है। यद्यपि हनुमान जी का चरित्र भी ऐसा ही है कि उसको घंटा घंटे में होने वाला नहीं है। हनुमान जी के संबंध में तो लिखा है, रामाय महामाला रत्नम वंदे लीलाकुशम। रामाय महामाला के रत्न ही हनुमान जी। हनुमान जी का चरित्र अलग कर दिया जाए तो जैसे माला उसका नग निकल जाए, रत्न निकल जाए तो माला की शोभा नहीं है, ऐसे ही हनुमत चरित्र के बिना श्रीमद् रामायण रत्नमाला की भी शोभा नहीं है। ऐसा अद्भुत चरित्र श्री हनुमान जी का। तो पहले भक्तमान ग्रंथ के अनुसार जो नाभाजी और प्रियादास जी ने स्मरण किया है उसके अनुरूप श्री हनुमान जी का स्मरण करते हैं। तत्पश्चात आगे यथामति यथा समय हनुमान जी की चर्चा करके अपनी वाणी को पवित्र करेंगे। श्री वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की, श्री नाभा गोस्वामी जी ने हनुमान जी का स्मरण उन भक्तों में किया है जिन भक्तों की भक्ति स्वयं भगवान करते हैं। 2 प्रकार के भक्त होते हैं। एक भक्त तो ऐसे होते हैं जो भगवान की भक्ति करते हैं और एक ऐसे भक्त होते हैं जिनकी भक्ति स्वयं भगवान करते हैं। माने उनका इतना अगाध प्रेम भगवान में हो जाता है कि ये यथा माम प्रपद्यन्ते तांस तथैव भजाम्यहम्, इसके अनुरूप वे निरंतर भगवान का स्मरण करते हैं और भगवान निरंतर उन भक्तों का स्मरण करते हैं। हनुमान जी की गणना उन्हीं भक्तों में जो भगवान के प्यारे भक्त हैं, भगवान जिनसे बहुत अधिक प्रेम करते हैं। भगवान सर्वतंत्र स्वतंत्र है। राम जी की महिमा गरिमा कैसी है?
राम राम।
सबही नचावत राम गोसाई। सबको नचाते ऐसे राम जी, इतने बड़े राम जी, जिसके बारे में राम अतर्क के बुद्धि मन वाणी और बुद्धि से अतर्क के वहां उसकी गति ही नहीं है। ऐसे राम जी, इतने बड़े राम जी, और इतने बड़े राम जी को हनुमान जी ने अपनी मुट्ठी में कर रखा है। बोलो, मुट्ठी में करने का मतलब जानते हो ना? बस में कर लेना, अधीन कर लेना। और ये सबके बस की बात नहीं है। बड़े बड़े अच्छे प्रेमी साधक थे, भगवत गिरा उन्हें ज्ञान दूंगा तो गीता वाटिका गोरखपुर वाले पूज्य श्री राधा बाबा के पास में रोने लगे। बोले बाबा किसी पद्धति से श्री कृष्ण का दर्शन कराइए। तो बाबा बोले रोने धोने से काम नहीं चलेगा, ये रोने धोने का नाटक मत करो, मुझे राजी कर लो। श्री कृष्ण तो मेरी मुट्ठी में है। क्या कहा? जिनके लिए तुम रो रहे हो ना वो मेरी मुट्ठी में, मुझे राजी कर लो। मुझे राजी कर लो इसका मतलब क्या है? मुझे राजी कर लो इसका मतलब है संत को राजी कर लो, सद्गुरु को राजी कर लो। संत सद्गुरु राजी हो जाएंगे तो भगवान तो मुट्ठी में है, सर्वतंत्र स्वतंत्र भगवान मुट्ठी में। महाराज, भगवान का एक बार राजी होना सरल है, पर संत सद्गुरु का राजी होना बहुत कठिन है। क्योंकि उनके सिद्धांतों को जो अपना जीवन बना लेता है, उनके सिद्धांतों को जो आत्मसात कर लेता है, संत उन पर रीझते हैं। भक्ति किसको मिलती? किसको मिलती भक्ति? अति दुर्लभ है भक्ति, मुक्ति से भी दुर्लभ है भक्ति। सुखदेव जी महाराज ने यहाँ तक कहा, मुक्तिं ददाति करिचित् स्मर भक्ति योगम। भगवान श्री हरि श्री कृष्ण भजन करने वालों को मुक्ति बहुत जल्दी दे देते हैं, लेकिन भक्ति योगम न ददाति, भक्ति योग नहीं देते हैं। क्योंकि मुक्ति देने के बाद भगवान को बंधन नहीं है, पर भक्ति देने के बाद प्रेम के बंधन में, भक्ति के बंधन में सर्वतंत्र स्वतंत्र भगवान को बंधना पड़ता है। गोपियां श्री कृष्ण को नचाती हैं। वो कैसे नचाती हैं? ज्ञान से नचाती हैं कि कर्म से नचाती हैं कि योग से नचाती हैं कि सांख्य से नचाती हैं कि साधन से नचाती हैं? भक्ति से नचाती हैं। ताही ताही रे की छोहरिया छछिया भर चाच पे नाच नवाज। ताही ताही रे की छोहरिया छछिया भर चाच पे नाच नवाज। भगवान नाना मेरे छछिया भर चाच पर। गोपी विष्णु गोपियों के बहलाए फुसलाए जाने पर ठाकुर जी माखन के लिए, छाछ के लिए नाचने लग जाते, कभी गाने लग जाते। कैसे? तद बसे दारुयत। वो सबके सूत्रधार हैं, वो तो कठपुतली हो जाते हैं, और गोपियां उनकी सूत्रधार बन जाती हैं। ये सामर्थ्य भक्ति में है। और श्री हनुमान जी मूर्तिमान भक्ति के स्वरूप हैं। हनुमान जी के रोम रोम में भक्ति विराजमान है। और वो भक्ति है क्या? यदि हम कहें कि भक्ति को एक वाक्य में कहो तो श्री राम नाम, श्री कृष्ण नाम, श्री हरि नाम, इसी को भक्ति कहते हैं। भगवान नाम ही भक्ति है। कैसे? बहुत ध्यान से सुने। श्रीमद् रामचरितमानस में उत्तरकांड में ज्ञान दीप का वर्णन है। आप सब जानते ज्ञान दीप। मानस जी घर में जाकर पढ़ लेना, ज्ञान दीप को पढ़ लेना, बहुत सुंदर है, जरूर पढ़ना चाहिए। और साधक ने बड़े यत्न से ज्ञान का दीपक जलाया और उस ज्ञान के दीपक के प्रकाश में अपनी अविद्या की गांठ को खोलने के लिए बैठा। लेकिन ये देवताओं को अच्छा नहीं लगा। हम तो भोग योनि में पड़े हैं, पूरे लोकों में अटके रह गए और ये संसार चक्र से मुक्त होना उनको अच्छा नहीं लगता। तो वे क्या करते हैं? इंद्री द्वार झरोखे नाना, इंद्री द्वार झरोखे नाना, तहाँ तहाँ सुर बैठे खरी थाना। आंख में देवता बैठे, कान में देवता बैठे, नाक में देवता, सब इंद्रियों में देवता बैठे। और आवत देखे विषय बयारी, विषय का पवन जैसे ही आता है तुरंत ही दे कपाट उभारी, किवाड़ खोल देते हैं। और जैसे ही इस जंगले से तेज हवा भीतर जाती है तो ज्ञान दीपक बुझ जाता। इतनी मेहनत करी, सात्विक श्रद्धा धेनु सुहाई, गाय मगाई उसको चराया, फिर निर्मल मन अहीर निज दासा, फिर दूध काढ़ा, फिर उसे ओटाया, फिर उसे जमाया, फिर उसे मथा, फिर घी निकला, फिर अपने मन को साधन से शुद्ध करके रुई बनाया, उसकी बत्ती बनाई, फिर घी डाला, फिर जलाया, सदगुरु की कृपा की चिनगारी से, वचन की चिनगारी से उसको जलाया। और इसके बाद अब सब करने बैठा तो इतना श्रम करने के बाद भी कहीं ज्यादा पानी बरस गया या हवा का झोंका आ गया और वो दीपक बुझ गया। साधक का श्रम व्यर्थ हो गया। यही कारण है कि ज्ञान मार्ग के साधकों को कई जन्म लग जाते हैं।